talked about this. So this Stafford has a bad contract right now, and he's made a lot of money. But he's not happy with it, and they've kind of put a Band-Aid on it in the last year. But Stafford now, this stuff gets out because Stafford and his people want it out. They're unhappy. And so Albert Breer says the Giants, the Browns, and the Steelers and the Raiders have all shown interest. Well, my take is you could put a caution tape around those 4 franchises offensively. Those are bad, danger, stay away. The Rams have 2 big advantages with Stafford here. Number one, they're really well run. How many NFL franchises, if I ask you today, are really well run? Baltimore, Kansas City, Philadelphia, Rams, Niners. It's not that many. And how many of the well-run franchises are also well-coached? Then it gets down to about 6, and the Rams are one of them. So sometimes your greatest leverage as a company is we've got our act together. Steelers offensively don't. Giants don't. Raiders don't. They're running through people.
Okay. So I want to talk about this, and I want to talk about this from 2 perspectives, both the Raiders and the Steelers. I actually would love this for both of these teams. Now, to be fair, I do agree that the Rams are better suited for Matthew Stafford because of mainly Sean McVay more than anything over the Raiders, over the Steelers. I'm sorry, Raiders and Steelers fans. That's a fact. That's a reality that you have to kind of wrestle with, and honestly don't even have to wrestle with. You kind of just have to accept. Now, maybe the future will change, especially for the Raiders with Chip Kelly, etc. But as of right now, Sean McVay is going to get the leg up for offensive coaching and, Matthew Stafford. But I think Chip Kelly and the Rams could have and Matthew Stafford. Chip Kelly and Matthew Stafford could have awesome success without a shadow of a doubt. When you have a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, someone who's been in the league for so long and someone who's willing to kind of, do what needs to be done, you're going to have so much more easier. You're going to be able to achieve higher levels of success significantly easier, much more easily. Listen, do the special coaches, the Andy Reids, the Sean McVays, etc., are they the best at maximizing and squeezing as much juice as possible? Absolutely. Absolutely. Of any quarterback, quite frankly. But when you have a quarterback at the level of Matthew Stafford, just making your offense good or great, for the most part, should be, I don't want to say effortless is probably too strong of a word, but it should be pretty smooth. As long as you have at least some of the bodies to get the job done, the O-line, the run game, some, weapons, etc. I'm not saying that you need an elite O-line or elite wide receiving core, but you obviously need to have something, right? You can't have just like a complete mess of a team and expect, Mahomes, Stafford, Lamar, any quarterback to step into that. But that's why I think the Steelers, as well as the Raiders, would really be set up for that. And I think the respective OCs for those teams, you give them Matthew Stafford, significantly better. You give Chip Kelly like a Gardner Minshew or an Aiden O'Connell. Will he be able to like win some games? Sure, but it's still going to be difficult. It's still going to be kind of drowning in quicksand. And same thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Can that offense, get something out of Justin Fields, something out of Russell Wilson? Sure. But it's going to be a massive upgrade with Stafford, which then makes the basics and what I just referred to as football 101, pretty much a given and a guarantee that maybe wasn't necessarily a given or guarantee with other quarterbacks. Not to mention it now opens everything up for the path to get to good and great just more smoothly, just more easier. So I think Stafford with the Steelers or the Raiders would be home runs for both those organizations. I really, really do. Because I think they would be immediately and significantly better. Significantly and immediately better. For Matthew Stafford himself, like what Colin's saying, yeah, I would want to stay with the Rams. I would. If you're Matthew Stafford, you're not going to say, okay, I want to go to Pittsburgh. Now, the only issue that you should have if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers is the concern is that Stafford, cold weather, rain, snow, etc. At this point of his career, his age, his body, he doesn't seem to necessarily thrive under those conditions. That would then concern me. And that's where Las Vegas kind of has the upper hand, because you're going to be playing In Denver, which is, going to be fine. Obviously, Las Vegas is going to be fine. The Chargers, LA, already the same stadium. The biggest question mark is KC, but that really only matters maybe kind of in the playoffs potentially. Which, if you play your cards right, maybe you don't got to face them. Because you're winning and they're losing, not because you're losing and they're winning. So, I would be a little concerned. I would be slightly hesitant with the Pittsburgh Steelers because of the weather and because of you're having to play Baltimore and Cincinnati and Cleveland. And, there's the potential for that to be like, I don't know. I don't think, Stafford was awful in the blizzard. There was a couple of moments that you weren't too feeling too comfortable with, but it's tough. He played pretty poorly in the other like rainy game against the 49ers. It just seems to be a little rough in weathered conditions. So that would make me somewhat concerned. But at the same time, if I'm the Steelers, it's just like I'd rather have that than Russell Wilson or Justin Jefferson. Or Justin Fields. Justin Jefferson. That'd be cool if he was your quarterback. Justin Fields. I hope I didn't say Justin Jefferson earlier on in this video because you guys are going to clown me and say I'm a clown. But Justin Fields. I'd rather do that any day of the week. Anytime you can upgrade a quarterback like that, you just do it and kind of just deal with it. But just my own personality, where I try to look at everything from 360 degrees, I would still have to process that in my mind in terms of the weather and his age and whatnot. The only problem with a team like the Steelers, and I think it's more important for the Steelers than the Raiders necessarily, is that like if I'm the Steelers, I'm at the point where like I want to find my long-term quarterback, and Stafford isn't, and so Stafford would still kind of perpetuate this team to a degree where you're like, hey, we're good, maybe even great now, and because of that, we can't get that quarterback. Like you still kind of cause a little bit of that cycle. You also might still have a little bit of PTSD from dealing with like an older Ben Roethlisberger. I could understand that. I think if the Raiders, if Pete Carroll locks down that defense and Chip Kelly, kind of gets to instill his offense. I mean, I think the Raiders immediately start winning. I mean, I think the Raiders are immediately in games, especially if you lock down that defense. And now you're allowing Matthew Stafford to play more situational complementary football, which is something that I always talk about. Oh my God. I mean, like that's an absolute recipe for success. If you get to win games with Matthew Stafford being a little bit more conservative, oh my God. I mean, like, again, that's how the Chargers won. That's how the Chiefs won a lot of games. It's how the Eagles won some games. Like it's a great way to ball. Look at the Cincinnati Bengals, not so good. So it puts them in an awesome position to do that, and I think they could potentially. I'd have to look at their roster a little bit more, and you'd have to figure out what they're going to do in free agency, during in the draft and whatnot. But like I think they would potentially legitimately be, right in the mix in the AFC. Again, I'm not going to pretend and be like, oh, they're Super Bowl contenders now and they can get to the AFC Championship. But like, I don't know, man. You got a great if you got a great defense and you got Matthew Stafford as your quarterback, you're just going to have significantly high levels of success as long as Matthew Stafford stays healthy and as long as you got a semblance of an O-line, a semblance of a run game, and just someone who can catch the ball. Again, you don't need elite. You just need something. You're going to win games. You're going to be competing, to be in the playoffs. And, quite frankly, again, it's hard to predict what the Texans are going to look like, what any of these teams are going to look like. But, like, you should be legitimately competing to win a playoff game even. So, like, to me, that would be really exciting. And I think that would add a ton of juice to the Raiders. More so than it would be necessarily for the Pittsburgh Steelers, just because the Pittsburgh Steelers have already kind of been in this situation. And I don't think they were a Matthew Stafford away from beating the Baltimore Ravens. But you can make an argument that the Raiders were a Matthew Stafford away from keeping Devontae and then making the playoffs. You could absolutely make that argument. And that's with two coaches who are, that's with coaching staff that's not even there anymore. And now I think you've significantly upgraded on defense and offensive coaching. So, yeah, I don't know. It's this is when we get really like, and I don't love this because it's like, I always try to stay clear of like talking about, a situation where it's like, hey, this quarterback could go to this team or this team. Let's talk about it. And like, it's fun, but it's like, for me personally, I get a little bit, and maybe I got to just kind of, it's my own hang up, but like, I don't like wasting time talking about Matthew Stafford to the Raiders and the Steelers. That's crazy. Yeah. And I start talking about it. And then I post this clip, and then 2 days later, it's Rams and Stafford signed 2-year deal. And I'm like, well, then I just wasted all my time talking about this. But I think that's just my own off-season hangups that I have to just accept. Like, that's off-season, sports talk. But I don't know. I get too easily excited. So I'm like, oh God, Matthew Stafford to the Raiders. That sounds awesome. Ooh, actually, Matthew Stafford to the Steelers. Like, that would be crazy. Like, Stafford against Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. Like, 4 games. Like, like, that's cool. That's exciting. Steelers fans would love that. Like, it's just, I don't know. I kind of want Stafford to go to both those teams, and I couldn't decide which would be more interesting. And from a pure entertainment perspective, I'd love him to leave LA and go to one of these teams because it's interesting to me. So, it's you have the fan version of yourself and like the analyst version of yourself. So I don't know. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Matthew Stafford potentially going to the Steelers or the Raiders? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.